Welcome again to another Vernon CMS webinar. Today we're going to be looking at locations. So we're going to start off with how do you move an object and work through all the different ways that you can move an object, look at packing units, move objects in bulk, look at how you can do offline recording of your locations, which is really useful when you don't have access to the internet or Vernon. And if we have some time at the end, I'll work through how you can manage your locations with creating a new location and cleaning up old locations that no longer exist. So I've opened up a lovely record of a Panamu slab, and we're going to want to move this lovely slab. I imagine it's pretty heavy, but we're going to move it to a new location. When I've opened up the object identification window, there's actually a little view at the bottom here that shows me where things are currently located. But I need to go to the location window to move an object. So clicking on that will open it up. Vernon has 3 different types of locations, which can seem like a lot, but it's worthwhile, trust me. We have the first one, which is current location, which I like to think of, where is it right now? Inventory, which is where did I last see it? So in this case, things haven't moved. They've just noticed where they are. So it's really good for if you have a routine inventory of a room, you can say it's still in the same place as I last saw it. Really great if something's lived in the same location for 12 years. You might look at something and say, that's a long time to have been in one location. But if it had a more recent inventory, it never moved anywhere, but it's been cited and checked, and you know it's likely to have still been in that same location. And lastly, we have usual location, which some people have renamed to storage location. It's where does this object usually live? So all 3 of these can be the same. All 3 of these can be very different. So it comes down to you sometimes have to do a bit of detective work because unfortunately Vernon isn't in the realm of magic and it hasn't got the ability to sense when an object has been moved. It does rely on humans to go through and move it and change its object location in Vernon. So it's only as good as the data entry people put in, which is sometimes where things fall over. But if I wanted to see everywhere that this had been, I can use the history button to sort of piece together where things have been. In this case, this object has only been in one location since 2005, and that's where it usually lives, room 1, offsite store. I might say, well, today we're moving it. It's time for it to get a new location. And to do this, you click on the move button. So you can put in the date. So you can backdate this. You can edit that to any time you wish. It doesn't let you do future dates. The time, but it autofills to whatever day and time you have opened that window. Authorizer and mover for some sites are mandatory fields. You can turn this on and off in your customized configuration. For others, it's suggested that you fill it in. I always like to think of the authorizer as whoever has asked for it to be moved or has agreed that it will be moved, and the mover is whoever physically handled it. And these might be 2 different people. They might be the same person. We always play a game at Vernon called Blame Bill. So I'm just going to put Bill's name into both of those fields. You can then move the whole of the object, which in our case for this Panamu slab is just one giant slab. There's only the whole. But if you start dealing with a tea set, for example, where some of the cups go to one location and others go to a separate one, you can choose from a list of the parts of what's available to where you would like them to go. The reason is, why did it move? What compelled you to move this object? Vernon does provide you with some suggestions or some terms that are already filled in for your system. You probably had more reasons added by previous staff or yourself, but you choose a reason that fits for you. The only one that's particularly special is usual location. So when you choose that, it's going to update that 3rd location type, usual location. Where does it normally live? So that's how usual locations get updated. But otherwise, you can just choose a term, short-term loan, for example. And we'll go into packing units a little bit later, and then deciding where this should be. So I'm going to go to a shelf, and typing that in and hitting enter brings me back everything that says shelf. Now, for the Vernon Systems Demonstration Museum, there's not that many shelves. But for you guys, you might want to put shelf 1, shelf 2, because I imagine you will have maybe a lot more shelves than what we have here on the screen. I'm going to say that it's all on shelf 1, bay 4, storeroom. So I tick that and click OK. And then there's an option for external, which in this situation, we're not going to be using. But if you are taking this object outside of your museum or gallery, you're moving it to somewhere on loan, it might be being restored by a conservator, for some reason it's left your site. You can have external be that person's name. So it works off the person file. So you can choose who has possession of that object in the interim. And any notes that you want to put about what happened and why and where it went. Clicking OK will move the object. So you can see the current location has updated, but the usual location hasn't. And the reason is we haven't updated the usual location. It still should live in that room. If I go to the history now, we'll see that we've now got that new line to tell us where it is. Awesome. So that's how you can move one object at a time. If you've got something that has a lot of parts, we've included an object now. Obviously, if you're looking at your history and it's just showing you all of the most recent movements of an object, it can be really confusing to figure out where every single part is. So the show all part button is actually going to list part 1 is in this location, part 2 is in this location, part 3 is in this location. So you can get a really quick snapshot of where everything is in that moment. If I wanted to update an inventory, I've wandered past shelf 1 and I'm like, aha, that Pounamu is still there. I want to say that it's still there. I haven't moved it. I'm not responsible for putting it there, but I have seen it there and I can verify that it's still there. And that's when you might use the inventory. You might also be doing more of a formal inventory of a room. And you'll see that it's very similar to the previous screen for movement. You have your date and time, you have why is it moving and where is it going. But the authorizer and the inventory reason are slightly different. You've got someone who's authorized that inventory, but you don't have any physical movement. So the mover field has been removed. And your inventory reason might be just inventoried, or it might be part of a specific project, for example, inventory 2018. And that means you can then search for everything inventoried in 2018. Let's blame Bill again. And we'll say it's still in that same location. So because I have that current location, it's assuming it's still there. So it's auto-filled it in whenever I clicked. So if I click OK, I've now got current location and inventoried location as the same, but I can see that maybe when they move from this place, it should go back to being in that usual location, room 1. So you can move an object to a usual location that updates this, or you can sort of cheat and just type straight in here and select where its usual location should be. So there's multiple ways to do it. If you do it this way, it's going to say, do you want to update the current location? I don't need to update the current location because I just did. So packing units, everyone's favorite thing. Packing units are a movable location is how we term them. It's a box, it's a crate, it's a pallet, it's something that may move around your museum or gallery, but hold many objects. So you might have 5 objects inside of box 1. And box 1 moves to lots of different places. And it's so much easier to just update where box 1 is than to go through each of the 5 objects each time and say they've moved to shelf 2. 5 objects might not be worth creating a packing unit, but sometimes if you've got photographs, for example, in a box, you might have 100. And then trying to update all of those individually can, well, make me break out in a cold sweat. So packing units let you move them all and save yourself some headaches. So the first thing we have to do is create a packing unit. At the moment, there is none, but we can say that this Pounamu is going to be added to a packing unit that we're going to make. We can scroll down on the left-hand side in the navigator until we get to packing unit, and we click on identification to open it. So the label is the important thing, because ideally, whatever you have as your label for your packing unit in Vernon should be the same label that is on that box, pallet, whatever it is in real life, so that you can match those two things up. So let's call it box 100. And you can decide on a range of things you can put in, whether it's storage, transport, or come up with your own terms. I'm going to say it's for storage only. What type is it? You can again create all of these. A description about what it is, useful if it's a specific crate that's been made to house an object for transport and it's been custom built. What size it is, that's useful as well if you're trying to figure out how big everything is and if it will fit on shelves. At the moment, there's nothing located inside of it, but if it did have something, you could click and see everything that's currently in it, everything that normally lives in it, and everything that's normally transported in it. There's a lot of information here you can put in about construction details. So some people actually use packing units for their exhibition cases. So they record all of the details about how the exhibition case was made, what materials it is, off-gassing and things like that people might need to consider. And then they can change out the objects that live in that packing unit. You can also add images, documents, and even correspondence about packing units if you've really desired to. But realistically, all you need is to put in a label. That will let you save the packing unit by itself, because you can find it each time. So now that we've made this, we can save the record. We've made our box 100, and we can go back to our object and decide to put it inside of a packing unit. The thing with that packing unit is that it's like a box in real life. When you have a box and you want to put an object in it, you have to put it down physically before you can fill it, right? You have to place the box down so objects can go in it. And the same thing's true for Vernon. You have to put the packing unit somewhere. Vernon doesn't like it when you try to put objects into a void. It generally doesn't like the void. So we have to give that packing unit a location so that we can put this Panamu inside of it. So to do this, we're going to be using a tool called bulk move. So we'll look at how you can move objects in bulk in general. And during that process, we'll also look at how you can move your packing unit so that you can put objects inside of it. And we'll move this Panamu into that packing unit at the same time. So first rule for any bulk tools in Vernon is close any records that you have open, because this way you aren't going to end up not moving something to the right location because it thinks you're trying to save the record. So good rule of thumb is, before using a bulk tool, have the gray Vernon screen. Most of the other windows closed. We're going to go to the tools menu, down to location functions, and we're going to choose bulk move. So this window sort of breaks into two parts. The top half of the screen is what is being moved, and the bottom half of the screen is all of the details about where and how and why it's being moved. So the bottom half of the screen is pretty much the same as what we normally get in moving a single object. The difference is here that you can type in your items one by one if you want. You can also use List Manager to do more searching from here, or type them in, or pull up a saved list. You can use Get List to open your portfolio and bulk move a saved list of items. So let's choose that artist list, and it will put all of those in. So that might take a moment if you're moving a very large list, because it's taking your list and putting it into this little table here. We'll come back to packing units in a second. There's two checkboxes that can be useful for you here. Assume whole object is to be moved if parts aren't specified. So that means that if, for example, a teapot or the silver dining fork is actually two forks, part A and part B, if I don't specify anything, it's going to move both of them. If it isn't ticked, it will ask me for every single record that has parts, which part are you moving? So if you know that you're moving all of the whole objects, this is a really good checkbox to use. but it can also cause you some issues later on where you might move something out of being on display because you moved its other part in storage. So use with caution. And my favorite one is open list of objects after move, because you want to see that everything went fine. Even though it tells you everything went fine, you still want to double check. Maybe that's just me being paranoid, but that's just what I do. I enjoy having the list of objects to have a quick flip through and just make sure everything went the way I expected it to. In the bottom half, we have our reason, which might be that short-term loan again. Who did this? And again, we blame Bill. Packing unit we'll come back to, and location. So where did it move? We can say shelf 4. There's options to check the rest period. So if it has light exposure and it's been made to rest and not be on display, it will come up with a warning that this is happening. That's auto ticked, so there's not really, but if you do want to ignore that, you can untick it and run it. So I'm ready to click OK. It comes up with different types of reports you can make. You can print this straight off if you really wish to, but I use the screen. No report just means it will run through. I like to use exception report. It is the default one, and it will just tell me if anything went wrong, which is generally what I'm most interested in. Yay, so I had no issues with that bulk move. Common issues is you've got a record open in the background, so the bulk move wasn't able to move the object because it thinks you are still trying to save it. But if you come up with something other than that, feel free to send us an email and we'll be happy to work through it with you. Open a list of objects, yes. And then it checks if you would like to run another bulk move, which today, yes, I will. And this report just lists all of the moves that have been done. If there's anything that's gone wrong, it will tell me that as well. So I can just close this. And there's my objects with their new current location, which I can see in my list manager. So back to bulk move. I've moved those objects now. I've put them in that location, but now I want to move my packing unit. So I had my box 100. And it's really useful to remember here that everything in the top half of the screen is things that are being moved. So in this case, I am putting my packing unit down. And I have to move the packing unit with bulk move because the very nature of packing units is that they hold many items. They move many items as well. So packing units can only be moved by bulk move just to make sure that all of the objects are also moved along with it. So top half is everything being moved. So I'm putting my box 100 down. My reason is going to be temporary storage. And I'm going to blame Bill again. And my location is going to be, let's choose room 1. So this is saying move that packing unit to this location. When I click OK, and then OK again, it's going to go through and do that. And I'm going to perform another bulk move this time, which is going to put all of those objects inside that packing unit. So this time I'm moving objects to a packing unit. So I can choose another list of objects, the Rodney Fumpston prints. I don't have to add anything in here because there's not a packing unit being moved. The objects are moving into a packing unit. So again, the reason is going to be temporary storage. Bill is going to authorize and move. And this time I'm going to fill in that packing unit down here with box 100. When I click OK, it's going to move all of those objects into that box. And I don't want to do another update. If I go back to that Panamu, I can move this into the packing unit either through the bulk move tool or by doing another movement and just moving it into that packing unit. Box 100. You can also add a usual locations packing unit, or you can say that this is only ever used for transport and you can add it to this field at the bottom here. If I want to now see what box 100 has got inside of it, I can go back to that packing unit and search for that box in the search bar at the top. And this time, when I go in here and click on current contents, we're going to see the 12 items that have moved inside of it, including the Punamu. But there's nothing that usually lives in there and nothing that's usually transported because no object has the packing unit for those two fields. So that's packing units in a nutshell. Very useful for, I've used them personally myself, and there's nothing quite like the relief of having a box filled with just hundreds of tiny little vials that are all individually accessioned. And then you have to go through and count each one out. And, it's beyond double checking. You have to go and move each one and list them in the bulk move versus quickly checking that packing unit has everything that's inside of it that says it's there. And then just moving that packing unit in one go saves you so much typing. It's wonderful. Okay. Bulk inventory is the other thing we'll have a quick look at, but very similar to bulk move. Bulk inventory is very much the same. It's just got that authorizer and inventory reason, but otherwise it's identical to the bulk move window. The only difference is it's going to update your inventory location rather than just your current location. It will update your current location if it's the most recent location. So if you moved something 12 years ago and then today you said, oh, it's still in that location, both your current location and your inventory location are going to update. However, if you moved it today and you inventoried it yesterday, today's movement will be the most current one. So the current one is always the most recent location history, wherever it is right that second. Whereas inventory will always show when it was last checked rather than where it is right now. Batch location update. We're doing a whirlwind tour, guys. So under the tools menu, location functions, there is an option called batch location change. And this is to help you update your locations when you have no internet access or no access to Vernon. XML import does not let you import location information, so you do have to use batch location change. And there's two things that you can do to make your life a lot easier. One is you can export your locations for offline work. Click OK. So that's taken all of my Vernon locations and put them into the spreadsheet. And then the other one is to export objects for offline work. So I could do a search for everything that should be in, let's find current location. There we go. Everything that should be in shelf 4. And we've got 11 items. We'll work from a small list today, but you could be doing this for entire storage units, everything that's in the storeroom, everything that's in bay 1, everything that should be in this location. I'm going to save this as a list. So file, save as list, shelf 1. And I'm going to go to Tools, Location Functions, Export Objects. And I'm going to open up my save list of shelf 1. So File, Open, Save List, shelf 1. And this is going to take the key information about this object, the name, and a few other details. So now that I've exported that, I can go into my File Explorer. Let's go into Demo, Data folder, and then the batch lock folder. So you want to open this spreadsheet. So you can read the object list. You can see it's brought over the object details. It's even told me where it should have been located. And I can read the location and reason list from Vernon, which provides me with all of the different locations that I have available. I can put in today's date and choose a location reason. Why am I doing this? And I can say, did I find this at its old location? Yes. Did I find it? No. and then where did I find it instead? So if you're checking for things, but you might just say that it's not at old location until you can find it. You can export your location changes. So now you're back in Vernon, you've got your lovely exported file that's been made, which just gets saved to the same place. So that's that location.exp. So we go to tools, location functions, and now we hop into batch location change. So the difference of batch location change from bulk move and bulk inventory isn't just that you can do it offline where you don't have access to the internet or Vernon, is that you can move your objects to many different locations. Bulk move, bulk inventory, everything you list, all of the packing units, all of the objects, all have to be going to the same place. Batch location change, they can all go to different locations. So I can say if this is a move or an inventory, I can say who's the authorizer, and there's an option here to import. And I can choose that move.exp file. And yes, I would like to import the changes. So it's listed each of these in one by one. And if you did want to, you can manually type in here as well with your object number. And I can put in the time and I can choose a reason that's different. So you can use this tool as well to just enter in your object and the location in like a sort of table format. Rather than having to flip between all the objects, you can just keep building and building and building by hitting the down arrow on your keyboard. And you can make them go to all sorts of different locations. So some people really do like using it that way as well. When I'm ready, I can click OK. And it's going to move all of those wonderful objects to those different places. And I don't want to perform another batch location change update. So I can see that all of those objects were moved successfully. So we're going to look at how to create new locations and deal with some of your old locations. So this is not something that you have to do every day. In fact, you might never have to do it. But generally, if you're a system manager of Vernon or you've been given access to look after the locations at one of your sites, you might need to do this. And it's very similar to how you would create hierarchies in any other authority field. So basically how you would create any term in the system. But locations are slightly different in that when you are creating a new term, often you're slotting another shelf into an existing hierarchy, or you are deleting something, but you don't want it to be deleted because you need to record that it existed at some point, but you don't want people moving objects to it anymore. There's a couple of ways that you can hop into location. One is to go to the database menu and then other files. You can then type in location and choose location and it will open. That's one way to do it. I cheat a lot on this one. The way I often open it is I have an object record open most of the time, and I go to the usual location and I click on that location field. And if it's blank, I can use that go to related data file button, and it's going to open up that location file for me. So depends on how you want to do it, but I always find going through object to me seems a lot simpler, but there is the option for database other files as well. So I want to see what my hierarchy is. A very quick way, again, is from your object is to just press the options button and to see everything. I want to see everything that's going on here though. So I might put a single square bracket into the search bar when I have that location data file open. And it's going to bring me back all of the terms. And it's probably going to end up duplicating them. And I'll be like, but these are all supposed to sit under here. You can use this button here, which looks like a little family tree. And that will drop your hierarchy down to showing you the top terms. So you can then expand it to your heart's content. So you can see where everything sits. If you wanted to go back to the other view, you can click on all, and it's going to show you everything that exists. I like to work in locations from this top term because I'm generally adding a shelf and I know that I need to rework things. So I might say I need to work in the storeroom, and I've got bay 4, and I want to add another bay. So we know where it needs to sit. It needs to sit under the storeroom, and there's nothing that sits underneath it at the moment. We don't need to select anything here. We just have seen how the hierarchy sits, and we know where we want to put our next term. So I know that I want to call this bay 5. Give it a long name. The next higher term is the storeroom, because that's what it's going to sit underneath. Right? So bay 1, 2, 3, 4, and then bay 5 will sit there. With location, you can add light exposure details to say in the storeroom, it's always 20 lux every 20 lux reading. And this is the time and date that it starts and ends in hours per week, but you can set that up, and that means light exposure will automatically calculate for any object in that location. When you click into thesaurus, you'll see that these storerooms have been the broader, and if you had shelves, they'd sit under the narrower term. I can save this, and now if I go back to my location hierarchy, we can see bay 5 is there. So out of all of these, the loading bay might no longer exist. It used to exist. It was a location where you could store things, but they've since taken that room away and given it to be an office for somebody. And so we no longer can put objects in that location. If I deleted this record, it would also be deleted from the location history. So we would never see that objects used to be located in that loading bay, which isn't a great solution. It's a good solution if no object has ever been stored in that location. Absolutely use it. But if I deleted it, I'm not going to be quite getting the result that I want. What I really want is to hide it so no one can see it and no one can select it. So making it not visible and making it not usable. Under very bottom here on the left, when you scroll down, you'll see it's created that other files location and all the windows available for location. You want to open up the authority management window. And this advice is true for any authority term you make, but generally you can get away with deleting those authority terms, doing an authority term report replace because another term is better. Locations are special in that you may just never be able to put objects in that location again, but you don't want to remove references that you used to put objects there. So we've got some term usage controls on the right here. Usable means they're searchable and you can use them. Not usable means that you can't find them and you aren't able to select them to move an object. The only way you can find them is if you open up this location file and do that search that I did here. But if you're trying to select it for an object as a location to move, it's just not going to be an option. Retrievable but not usable is very useful, and we'll use this in another example shortly. For now, we're going to say that the loading bay is a not usable term. So if I save this and we go back into an object and I look at that location hierarchy, there is no longer the loading bay as an option here. If I go back into location, we can see that that loading bay is still there as a term. It's got an NU in front of it to indicate that it's a not usable term. So this will show up like that with an NU in front of things in an object's location history, but they can't select it to move an object or a packing unit to it. But you can always come back in there and make it reusable if for some reason that office was made available to collections teams again. We may also like to say, well, nothing should be located in the Vernon Systems Museum or in the offsite store. That's far too general. Like if something's put in the whole museum, that doesn't tell us where it is. That's a lot of places it could be hiding. So we don't want people to be able to use this, but it's useful to keep that term visible, right? It's useful when you're looking at that location hierarchy to be like, am I in the offsite store or the Vernon Systems Museum? So there's an option, that third option of retrievable but not usable, that creates what we call guide terms. They show up as ways of navigating through this hierarchy, but they're not able to be selected or used. So if I go back in and I go to type in offsite, I don't want any object to just be located to the overall offsite store. So I change it to retrievable but not usable. And I might do the same with the Vernon Systems Museum, making that retrievable but not usable and saving the record. If I come back into object now and look at that location, we have RNU offsite store. You can still see it as a term, it's still present, and you can use it for navigating, but no one can locate anything to it. It's a non-usable term. So it gives you that flexibility to have those guide terms that help people filter down into rooms, into sites, into storage sections, but prevents them from just being maybe a little bit lazy or clicking in the wrong place and just saying it's somewhere in the museum. It's very important that before you do this, which I didn't do, is to do a search on current location and see if anything is located in these still. Less so for retrievable but not usable, because they'll still come up in a search. But before you make anything not usable, double check that nothing's currently located to it, because then it just disappears as an option that people can use or search by. So it's definitely useful to do a search to make sure nothing's currently located there. Hopefully that gives you guys a good sense of creating some new location terms. You can also just, as I said, go to related data file, come up with a new shelf 6, for example, and then choose your next higher term. Bay 4. And that's going to create me another shelf. You may not have permission to change this information, so you can always talk to whoever is your Vernon administrator about creating these terms. But moving and inventorying and all of the other things we covered a bit earlier on should be something everyone has access to, but hopefully there's been a little taster in here for everybody. Great to see everybody, and take care. Mā te wā.